a city where justice and ambition collide, a lawyer's rise and ethical fall, an unforeseen alliance and redemption's call. Embark on a journey of power, truth, and change. The courthouse stood resolute against the skyline of Franklin's city, an imposing structure of stone and glass that had witnessed countless tales of justice and injustice alike. Its steps were a theater where actors from all walks of life played their parts under the scrutiny of both the law and the public eye. On this particular morning, the sun cast long shadows across the steps as people bustled in and out of the building. Among them was Matthew Sterling, a seasoned lawyer known for his sharp tongue and sharper suits. His reputation preceded him, not only for his courtroom prowess but also for his unfiltered opinions that often teetered on the edge of decency. Matthew, adjusting his tie and flashing a smile that was more smirk than sincerity, spotted a woman making her way up the steps. Her presence was commanding, with an air of confidence that seemed to part the crowd around her. She was a striking figure, dressed in a tailored black suit, her hair a halo of curls that caught the morning light.
"Well, what do we have here?"
Matthew quipped loudly, his voice cutting through the morning bustle.
"Would you look at that? A bit of color finally gracing these old steps. I hope you know your way around inside, sweetheart."
His tone dripped with condescension, and a few heads turned, some in dismay, others with curiosity. The woman paused, her eyes meeting his with a calm intensity that belied the storm beneath. She did not flinch or falter, standing her ground with a poised dignity that seemed to challenge the very earth beneath their feet.
"I assure you,"
she replied, her voice steady and strong.
"I know exactly where I'm going."
Matthew chuckled, a self-satisfied sound that left an echo of arrogance in the air.
"Good for you,"
he said, dismissively waving his hand as if to shoo away an unwanted thought.
"Just make sure you keep out of my way, all right?"
As the woman continued her ascent, Matthew turned to his colleague, a fellow lawyer who had witnessed the exchange with a mixture of discomfort and amusement.
"People these days,
Matthew muttered, shaking his head.
They think they can just waltz in and change the world."
His colleague, shifting uneasily, ordered a non-committal nod.
Times are changing, Matt. You might want to watch yourself.
Matthew waved off the warning with a laugh.
"Please, I know how this city works. It bends to those who know how to play the game."
Unbeknownst to Matthew, the game was about to change. The courtroom doors would soon reveal truths hidden in plain sight, and the players on this stage would find their roles unexpectedly reversed. But for now, the sun continued its ascent, casting new shadows on the steps of the courthouse, where stories began and destinies awaited their turn. The air inside courtroom 4 was a careful balance of tension and anticipation, an invisible thread connecting every person present. The walls, lined with oak paneling, absorbed the whispers of speculation that flitted among the audience like restless moths drawn to a flame. At the center of it all stood Matthew Sterling, poised at the defense table with the casual confidence of a man who knew the odds were often in his favor. Matthew was here to defend Mark Cobb, a millionaire entrepreneur with a penchant for risky ventures and a knack for landing on his feet. Until now. Accusations of fiscal fraud loomed over Cobb like a thundercloud, threatening to wash away the empire he had meticulously built. It was a high-profile case, one that drew the attention of the media and the public alike, and Matthew relished every minute of it. Matthew Sterling's journey to the top was not one of noble ambition or altruistic fervor. No, his ascent was paved with shrewd maneuvering, relentless ambition, and a willingness to bend or outright break the rules when it suited him. Born into a modest family in a small town, Matthew quickly learned that power was the only currency that truly mattered in the world. His early career was marked by a series of calculated moves. After graduating from a prestigious law school, he took on cases that others deemed unwinnable. Through a combination of cunning tactics and an uncanny ability to manipulate narratives, Matthew turned the courtroom into his personal stage. His reputation flourished as he won case after case, often leaving behind a trail of ethical questions and dubious dealings. Matthew's philosophy was simple: the end always justified the means. Whether it involved burying evidence, coercing witnesses, or exploiting loopholes in the law, he was prepared to do whatever it took to ensure victory for his clients and for himself. His moral compass was as flexible as his approach to the law, a trait that both repelled and fascinated those who knew him. As Matthew reviewed his notes, he couldn't help but feel a thrill of anticipation. Defending Mark Cobb was not just about protecting a client. It was about reinforcing his own status as the city's preeminent legal mind. Cobb had come to him in desperation, aware that his financial dealings had attracted the scrutiny of the authorities. The charges of fiscal fraud threatened not only his wealth but his freedom, and he needed someone with Matthew's audacity to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The evidence against Cobb was substantial, involving complex financial schemes and offshore accounts that painted a damning picture. Yet, Matthew saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. He had already begun spinning narratives to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, positioning Cobb as a misunderstood genius rather than a criminal mastermind. As the courtroom filled with spectators and the clock ticked towards the start of the proceedings, Matthew glanced towards the bench where the judge would soon appear. His mind was a whirl of strategies and counter-strategies, a master chess player ready to engage in battle. Little did he know, the woman he had encountered on the courthouse steps was about to enter his life once more, in a role that would test every ounce of his cunning and resilience. For now, Matthew's focus was singular, his determination unyielding. The game was about to begin, and he was ready to do whatever it took to ensure that the scales of justice tipped in his favor. The courtroom buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation as the doors swung open, admitting a stream of journalists, spectators, and legal observers eager to witness the unfolding drama. The case of Mark Cobb had captured the city's attention, promising a clash of titanic proportions between two very dire-tint legal minds. At the heart of the prosecution was Mary Brown, a formidable lawyer whose reputation for ethical integrity was as solid as the oak furniture lining the courtroom. Unlike Matthew Sterling, Mary had built her career on the principles of justice and fairness, often choosing cases that aligned with her moral compass rather than her wallet. Her dedication to the truth was unwavering, even if it meant facing opponents with more resources and less scruples. Mary was a striking figure, her presence in the courtroom both commanding and composed. She wore her professionalism like a shield, her tailored gray suit a testament to her nonsense approach to the law. Her hair, a cascade of ebony waves, framed a face that bore the marks of hard-worn wisdom and unyielding resolve. She was known for her meticulous preparation and her ability to dismantle arguments with a quiet, incisive precision. Despite her sterling reputation, Mary had not won as many cases as her peers. Her commitment to ethical practice often placed her at a disadvantage in a world where winning was sometimes seen as more important than how the victory was achieved. Yet, she remained undeterred, her resolve reinforced by the belief that each case was an opportunity to make a difference, even if the victories were few and far between. As the proceedings began, Mary rose to address the court. Her voice, steady and clear, rang out across the room, capturing the attention of all present.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
She began, her eyes sweeping across the room with a quiet intensity.
we are here today to seek justice for actions that undermine the very fabric of our financial system. The evidence will show that Mark Cobb engaged in a pattern of deceit and manipulation, using his position to enrich himself at the expense of others.
Mary laid out the prosecution's case with methodical precision, presenting a tapestry of evidence that painted a compelling picture of Cobb's alleged misconduct. She spoke of offshore accounts and fraudulent transactions, of numbers that danced on the edge of legality before plunging into the depths of corruption. In her hands, The evidence became a narrative, one of betrayal and greed, of a man who had let ambition cloud his judgment. Her argument was not just about facts and figures, it was a moral appeal, a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and the responsibility that came with it. Across the courtroom, Matthew Sterling listened with a mixture of amusement and impatience. To him, Mary's arguments, though well-crafted, were ultimately naive. He viewed her ethical stance as a weakness to be exploited, a quaint adherence to principle that had no place in the brutal arena of high-stakes litigation. Matthew's confidence was palpable, a sharp contrast to Mary's understated resolve. He believed that his experience and tactical prowess would see him through, that Mary's insistence on playing by the rules would be her undoing. In his mind, the outcome was already a foregone conclusion, a mere formality to be played out before an audience eager for spectacle. Yet, beneath his outward bravado lay a flicker of curiosity, a question that lingered. Despite his certainty, could Mary Brown, with her principles and her persistence, truly pose a threat to his dominance? As the first day of the trial drew to a close, Matthew couldn't help but wonder if he would soon find out. The stage was set for a battle of wits, a contest between two lawyers whose paths were about to converge in unexpected ways. The stakes were high, and the game was on. Each move carefully calculated, each word a weapon in a war of ideals and ambition. The days ahead promised to test not only their legal acumen, but their very beliefs about what it meant to seek justice in a world of shadows and light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Franklin City, Matthew Sterling sat in his office, surrounded by a fortress of legal documents and case files. The room was a testament to his meticulous nature, every surface covered with evidence of his relentless preparation. He was a man on a mission, determined to orchestrate a defense so seamless that it would not only exonerate Mark Cobb, but also reinforce his own reputation as an unrivaled legal tactician. Matthew's strategy revolved around a careful blend of truth and deceit, a skill he had honed over years of navigating the murky waters of the legal system. At the heart of his plan was the manipulation of documentation, subtly altering financial records and correspondence to create doubt and confusion. He understood that in the world of high-stakes litigation, perception was often more powerful than reality. Working late into the night, Matthew instructed his team to craft an alternate narrative, one that painted Cobb as a victim of circumstance rather than a perpetrator of fraud. Documents were carefully doctored to suggest that Cobb's financial dealings were misinterpreted, a series of unfortunate coincidences rather than deliberate deceit. Every detail was scrutinized, every possibility considered as Matthew constructed a defense that would withstand even the most rigorous examination. Equally crucial to his strategy were the witnesses. Matthew knew that convincing testimonies could sway a jury far more effectively than mere documents. To that end, he reached out to several key figures, associates of Cobb who had benefited from his ventures, as well as individuals whose livelihoods depended on Cobb's continued success. These testifiers were coached carefully, their statements rehearsed until they could deliver them with the conviction of truth. Some were persuaded by promises of future business opportunities, while others were subtly coerced with the threat of exposure to their own questionable dealings. Matthew left nothing to chance, ensuring that each witness would bolster his narrative and undercut the prosecution's case. The day of the trial dawned bright and clear, the air crisp with the anticipation of the battle to come. As the courtroom filled with the murmur of voices and the rustle of papers, all eyes turned to the bench as the judge made his entrance. Judge Harold Thompson, a rotund figure draped in judicial robes, settled into his seat with a commanding presence. Known for his love of luxury and the finer things in life, Judge Thompson was a familiar face to Matthew. Their paths had crossed on more than one occasion, and Matthew was well aware of the judge's inclinations. Thompson's reputation for favoring those who knew how to grease the wheels of justice was no secret, And Matthew counted on this familiarity to tilt the proceedings in his favor. The judge's booming voice called the court to order, his eyes sweeping the room with an air of regal authority. As the proceedings commenced, Matthew felt a surge of confidence. With Judge Thompson presiding, he believed that the scales of justice were already weighted in his favor. If everything went according to plan, the trial would be a mere formality, a performance that would end with Cobb's acquittal and Matthew's continued ascent in the legal world. As the trial unfolded, Matthew's plans seemed to proceed without a hitch. The doctored documents and carefully coached witnesses wove a narrative that left the prosecution scrambling to counter. Mary Brown's determined Orts, though admirable, faltered under the weight of manufactured doubt and the judge's subtle favoritism. Matthew basked in the glow of his apparent success, confident that the outcome was a foregone conclusion. Yet, beneath his polished exterior, a whisper of unease lingered, a reminder that even the most carefully laid plans could unravel with a single, unexpected turn. For now, however, the courtroom was his stage, and the performance was proceeding precisely as scripted. The trial of Mark Cobb had been underway for several tense days, the courtroom a hive of activity and anticipation. Each session brought new developments and revelations, with the stakes rising ever higher. Yet, beneath the surface, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the proceedings, an unease that seemed to whisper of the unexpected. On the morning of what was expected to be a pivotal day in the trial, the atmosphere in courtroom 4 was charged with expectation. The audience, mixed of legal professionals, journalists, and curious onlookers, settled into their seats, eager for the day's events to unfold. Matthew Sterling, ever the picture of composure, took his place at the defense table, exuding an air of assured confidence. Judge Harold Thompson, with his familiar air of authority, arrived punctually, his entrance greeted with the customary rustle of acknowledgement from those assembled. As he took his seat, his presence seemed to settle over the room like a well-worn cloak. The proceedings began, each word and gesture a part of the intricate dance of justice. Yet, as the morning wore on, a subtle change began to manifest in the judge's demeanor. His usual vigor appeared diminished, his face a shade paler than its customary ruddy hue. Those seated closest to the bench noticed the slight tremor in his hands, the way his breath came in shallow, uneven bouts. It was during a particularly heated exchange between the opposing counsels that the first sign of trouble emerged. Judge Thompson, in the midst of delivering a sharp rebuke, suddenly faltered. His words trailed off into silence, his eyes widening in a moment of confusion. A murmur of concern rippled through the courtroom as he clutched at his chest, his expression one of shock and distress. In an instant, the room erupted into chaos. The judge's gavel clattered to the floor as he slumped forward, his robust form crumpling under the bench. Gasps and cries of alarm echoed through the oak-paneled walls, the orderly proceedings giving way to pandemonium. Court ursers rushed to the judge's side, their urgent calls for medical assistance punctuating the din. Judge Thompson's sudden heart attack brought the trial to an abrupt halt. Paramedics arrived swiftly, their movements escient and practiced as they worked to stabilize the stricken judge. The gravity of the situation was clear to all present. The trial, with its high-profile stakes and intense scrutiny, was now suspended indefinitely. The courtroom was cleared, its occupants spilling into the corridors with a mix of shock and disbelief. For Matthew Sterling, the abrupt cessation of proceedings was both a shock and an opportunity. With the trial postponed for 2 weeks, he found himself with an unexpected window to reinforce his already formidable defense strategy. As the city buzzed with speculation and concern for Judge Thompson's recovery, Matthew retreated to his office, the unexpected delay odoring him a chance to further refine his tactics. He spent the ensuing days poring over documents, his sharp mind dissecting every detail with surgical precision. The extra time allowed him to polish the narrative he intended to present, ensuring that every piece of evidence, every witness testimony aligned seamlessly with his version of events. Matthew's team worked tirelessly, reviewing and revising documentation to leave no stone unturned, no weakness unexploited. As the 2-week hiatus unfolded, Matthew's confidence grew. He believed the additional preparation would cement his advantage, turning any lingering doubts into certainties. The city awaited the trial's resumption with bated breath, the delay only heightening the drama surrounding the case. For now, the courtroom remained silent, its doors closed against the outside world. But soon, it would awaken once more, ready to resume the battle of wits that had captivated Franklin City. Matthew Sterling was ready, his mind a whirlwind of strategies, each one calculated to ensure his triumph when the day of judgment finally arrived. The courthouse loomed ahead, a bastion of legal battles that had become almost a second home to Matthew Sterling. The morning air was crisp and invigorating as he strode purposefully toward the entrance, ready to resume the trial of Mark Cobb. The unexpected delay due to Judge Thompson's heart attack had been both a disruption and a boon, allowing Matthew to hone his defense strategy to near perfection. Today, he was prepared to reclaim his place on the stage of justice. As Matthew approached the courthouse steps, he noticed the familiar bustle of activity, journalists setting up their equipment, legal clerks hurrying about, and a line already forming to enter the building. It was amidst this throng that his eyes caught sight of a figure he had encountered once before. The woman stood with her back to him, her presence as commanding as he remembered. She wore a sleek black suit that accentuated her silhouette, her hair a cascade of curls that danced in the morning breeze. There was something about her that drew attention, a quiet yet undeniable authority. Matthew, with his usual swagger, stepped into the line behind her, his mind already formulating a quip. The memory of their previous encounter flickered briefly in his mind, a spark of amusement in the otherwise focused landscape of his thoughts.
Well, well.
He said, his voice carrying a hint of mockery.
It seems we meet again. I didn't expect to see you back here so soon. Still trying to find your way around, sweetheart?
The woman turned slowly, her eyes meeting his with the same calm intensity that had unnerved him before. Her expression was inscrutable, a mask of composure that gave nothing away. Matthew, mistaking her silence for submission, pressed on.
It's a big day in here.
He continued, gesturing towards the courthouse.
Important minds at work. I hope you know when to step aside and let those who know the game take the lead.
The line moved forward, and Matthew took a step ahead, his confidence unshaken by her lack of response. He flashed a smile that was more smirk than sincerity, convinced that he had asserted his superiority once again. The courtroom was abuzz with anticipation as the trial of Mark Cobb resumed. The delay had only intensified the public's interest, and every seat was filled with spectators, eager to witness the continuation of the high-stakes drama. Matthew took his place at the defense table, his demeanor one of assured confidence. As the room settled into a hushed expectation, the doors to the judge's chambers opened, and a figure emerged that sent a ripple of surprise through the courtroom. It was not Judge Harold Thompson who took the bench, but a woman whose presence commanded immediate respect and attention. Matthew's heart skipped a beat as he recognized her. It was the same woman he had mocked on the courthouse steps, the one whose resolve had challenged him without a word. Her name was announced to the court, Judge Anna Malone. The realization struck him with the force of a cold, hard truth. She was not just another face in the crowd. She was the arbiter of justice who would preside over the trial, the one whose judgment could determine the fate of his client and the course of his career. Judge Malone's voice was steady and authoritative as she addressed the court.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I will be presiding over this trial moving forward. Let us proceed with the case at hand.
Her calm demeanor and unwavering gaze left no room for doubt. She was in control, and the courtroom was now her domain. Matthew felt a flicker of unease, a rare sensation for a man accustomed to holding the reins of power. The trial resumed, but the dynamic in the room had shifted. Judge Malone's presence was a constant reminder of the encounter on the steps, a humbling echo of his earlier arrogance. He found himself scrutinizing her every move, searching for any sign of bias, any indication that she might let their previous encounter influence her decisions. Yet, as the proceedings unfolded, it became clear that Judge Malone was nothing if not impartial. Her rulings were fair, her questions incisive, and her command of the courtroom absolute. She listened intently to both sides, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts or inclinations. Matthew's confidence, though still present, was tempered by the unexpected turn of events. He was forced to confront the limits of his own assumptions, to reckon with the reality that the very person he had underestimated could now dictate the outcome of the trial. As the day progressed, he found himself adapting to the new circumstances, his strategies evolving to meet the challenge posed by Judge Malone's presence. It was a reminder that in the world of justice, as in life, nothing was ever truly certain. The trial continued, each session a test of wits and will, with Matthew determined to prove himself despite the unforeseen twist. Yet, beneath his professional veneer, a seed of change had been planted, a recognition of the power of humility and the folly of underestimation. For Judge Anna Malone, her role was clear: to uphold the law with integrity and fairness, to ensure that justice was served without prejudice or favor. And, for Matthew Sterling, the lesson was equally profound. In the theater of justice, every act has consequences, and every player, no matter how seemingly inconsequential, has the power to alter the course of the narrative. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Franklin City, Matthew left the courthouse with a new understanding of the game he thought he had mastered. The tables had turned, and the story was far from over. The trial of Mark Cobb resumed with a renewed fervor, the courtroom brimming with anticipation and tension. Judge Anna Malone presided with her customary poise, her presence a reassuring constant amidst the unfolding drama. The prosecution, led by Mary Brown, was ready to continue their pursuit of justice, armed with new strategies and evidence that promised to challenge Matthew Sterling's meticulously crafted defense. Mary Brown, known for her unwavering commitment to truth and justice, began the day with a quiet confidence that belied the storm she was about to unleash. Her opening remarks were measured and precise, setting the stage for the revelations to come.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Mary began, her voice steady and composed.
today we will present new evidence that sheds light on the true nature of the financial dealings at the heart of this case.
With a series of deliberate gestures, she introduced a series of documents and witnesses that had not been part of the initial proceedings. These elements, carefully curated during the trial's unexpected delay, were poised to dismantle the foundation of Matthew's defense. Mary called her first witness an unexpected figure whose testimony had the potential to change the trajectory of the trial. The witness, a former associate of Mark Cobb, took the stand with a mixture of reluctance and resolve. Under Mary's skillful questioning, the witness revealed a series of transactions and communications that painted a damning portrait of Cobb's financial activities. The courtroom listened intently as the witness detailed the intricate web of deceit and manipulation orchestrated by Cobb, implicating him in a scheme that extended far beyond the initial allegations. The evidence was compelling, the testimony riveting, and the impact on the jury palpable. As the witness spoke, Mary presented a series of documents that corroborated the testimony: emails, financial records, and correspondence that had been previously overlooked or dismissed. The narrative that emerged was one of deliberate deception and calculated risk, a far cry from the misunderstood genius Matthew had attempted to portray. Across the courtroom, Matthew Sterling's composure remained intact, though his mind was a whirlwind of recalibration. The prosecution's revelations were unexpected, a series of blows that threatened to crack the armor of his defense. Yet, Matthew was nothing if not adaptable, and he knew that the key to survival lay in his ability to pivot. As Mary concluded her presentation, Matthew rose to cross-examine the witness. His questions were incisive and strategic, designed to undermine the credibility of the testimony and sow doubt in the minds of the jurors. He challenged the witness's motivations, highlighted inconsistencies, and sought to recast the narrative in a light more favorable to his client. Despite his best efforts, the prosecution's case had gained significant ground. The evidence was robust, the witness testimony persuasive, and the jury's attention firmly captured by the unfolding drama. As the day's proceedings drew to a close, Matthew found himself faced with a daunting challenge. The prosecution had dealt a series of heavy blows to his defense, and the path to victory appeared more precarious than ever. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, Matthew's resolve was unbroken. He spent the evening immersed in strategy sessions with his legal team, exploring every possible avenue to counter the prosecution's newfound momentum. His mind, sharp and calculating, worked tirelessly to identify weaknesses in the case against Cobb and to exploit any opportunities for redemption. For Mary Brown, the day had been a triumph, a testament to the power of truth and perseverance. She remained vigilant, knowing that the battle was far from over and that the stakes could change with each passing moment. As Franklin City settled into the quiet of night, the trial of Mark Cobb hung in a delicate balance. The prosecution's revelations had shifted the dynamics of the courtroom, challenging Matthew Sterling to confront the limits of his own tactics and assumptions. The next phase of the trial promised to be a decisive one, a test of skill, strategy, and integrity that would determine the outcome of a case that had captivated the city. In the theater of justice, every move mattered, and every act carried the weight of consequence. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the very essence of legal acumen and the pursuit of justice. As the sun rose once more over Franklin City, the players in this unfolding drama prepared to face the challenges that awaited them, each determined to shape the narrative in their favor. The pressure inside courtroom 4 was palpable, as if the very air was charged with the weight of expectations and the intensity of a battle nearing its climax. The trial of Mark Cobb had reached a critical juncture, and the stakes were higher than ever. Matthew Sterling, known for his strategic genius and unyielding ambition, was prepared to pull out all the stops to secure a victory. The lure of wealth and power had always been a potent motivator for Matthew, but the promise made by Mark Cobb was unparalleled. Cobb, a man with influence stretching across the financial and political landscape, had assured Matthew of rewards that extended far beyond the courtroom, if only he could deliver an acquittal. The allure of such a future was impossible to resist, and Matthew was willing to go to any lengths to ensure that promise was fulfilled. In the dimly lit confines of his oche, surrounded by the hum of computers and the soft rustle of legal papers, Matthew orchestrated his most audacious plan yet. He knew that the path to victory lay not just in navigating the complexities of the law, but in mastering the art of perception. Truth, he believed, was malleable, a tool to be shaped and wielded to suit his needs. To this end, Matthew had enlisted a team of experts skilled in digital manipulation. Their task was to alter key pieces of evidence, audio recordings, financial data, and communications, crafting a narrative that exonerated Cobb and implicated others in the alleged wrongdoing. Emails were adjusted to suggest that Cobb had been misled by unscrupulous partners, while financial records were subtly modified to create an illusion of legitimacy in his dealings. The courtroom, with its austere walls and solemn proceedings, became the stage for Matthew's intricate gambit. Each day as the trial unfolded, he presented evidence that had been carefully doctored, his arguments weaving a tapestry of doubt and confusion that left the prosecution scrambling to keep pace. Witnesses were cross-examined with surgical precision, their testimonies twisted to fit the alternate reality Matthew had devised. Yet even as his strategy seemed to gain traction, Matthew was acutely aware of the risks. The slightest misstep, the tiniest crack in the facade, could unravel everything. He operated with the precision of a master tactician, each move calculated to maintain the delicate balance of truth and deception. Despite his outward confidence, an undercurrent of doubt began to gnaw at Matthew's resolve. The enormity of his actions, the ethical lines he had crossed, weighed heavily on his conscience, a quiet but persistent reminder of the cost of victory. He found himself questioning the very nature of justice and the role he played in shaping it. As the trial neared its conclusion, Matthew faced a pivotal decision: continue down the path of manipulation and deceit, or confront the moral implications of his choices. The promise of power and wealth was tantalizing, but the cost of such a victory loomed large in his mind. The final days of the trial approached with an air of inevitability, each session a crescendo of tension and anticipation. The courtroom buzzed with speculation, the eyes of the city fixed on the outcome of a case that had captivated its collective imagination. For Matthew Sterling, the moment of truth was at hand. The decisions he made in the days to come would determine not only the fate of Mark Cobb, but also the trajectory of his own career and conscience. As he prepared for the final act of this legal drama, he knew that the path he chose would define him in ways he had never anticipated. The stage was set for a dramatic conclusion, a clash of ideals and ambitions that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. In the theater of justice, every choice carried weight, and Matthew Sterling stood on the precipice of a decision that would shape his legacy forever. The morning sun rose over Franklin City, casting a golden glow across the courthouse that had become a crucible for the trial of Mark Cobb. Inside Courtroom 4, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation, the culmination of weeks of legal maneuvering and high-stakes drama. Today, the trial would reach its conclusion, and the verdict would be delivered, a moment that held the potential to alter lives and legacies. Matthew Sterling arrived at the courthouse with his customary confidence, his every step a testament to the meticulous planning and strategic prowess that had brought him to this point. Despite his distaste for Judge Anna Malone, whose impartiality and integrity had challenged his every move, Matthew believed that his plan would withstand the scrutiny of even the most discerning eye. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations and the soft rustle of papers as spectators, journalists, and legal professionals filled the seats, eager to witness the final act of the trial. The prosecution, led by Mary Brown, prepared to make their closing argument, their resolve undiminished despite the obstacles they had faced. Matthew took his place at the defense table, his mind a whirlwind of strategies and contingencies. He had left nothing to chance, ensuring that each piece of evidence, each witness testimony, aligned seamlessly with the narrative he had crafted. The odds, he believed, were in his favor. As the proceedings commenced, Mary Brown rose to deliver her closing argument. Her voice, calm and resolute, echoed through the courtroom, capturing the attention of all present. She spoke of justice and accountability, of the responsibility to uphold the law and protect the innocent from the machinations of the powerful.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Mary began, her eyes meeting theirs with unwavering sincerity.
we have heard testimony and seen evidence that reveals a pattern of deceit and manipulation. Mark Cobb's actions have consequences, and it is our duty to ensure that justice is served.
Her words were a clarion call for truth, a reminder of the moral imperative that lay at the heart of the legal system. Yet Matthew remained unshaken, his confidence in his defense unyielding. When it was his turn, Matthew rose with a flourish, his demeanor one of assured charisma. He addressed the jury with the skill of a seasoned orator, weaving a narrative that cast doubt on the prosecution's case and painted Cobb as a victim of circumstance.
Members of the jury,
Matthew intoned, his voice rich with conviction.
what we have here is a misunderstanding, a series of unfortunate events that have been misconstrued as criminal intent. Mark Cobb is not a villain, but a visionary, misunderstood by those who do not see the bigger picture.
As the closing arguments concluded, the weight of the trial's outcome hung heavy in the air. The jury retired to deliberate, leaving the courtroom in a state of suspense. Matthew's gaze flickered to Judge Malone, whose calm composure was both a source of irritation and grudging respect. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity as the jury deliberated, the tension in the courtroom palpable. Finally, they returned, their expressions inscrutable as they took their seats. The foreperson rose, holding a slip of paper that contained the verdict. Judge Malone surveyed the room, her presence a steadying force amidst the charged atmosphere.
Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
She asked, her voice clear and authoritative.
We have, Your Honor.
The foreperson replied, handing the paper to the bailey, who then passed it to Judge Malone. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Malone read the verdict. Her expression remained neutral, revealing nothing of the words she had seen. She turned to face the jury and the assembled spectators, her voice steady as she prepared to pronounce the outcome. As the moment drew closer, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Matthew Sterling's heart raced. He had invested everything in this trial, and the stakes felt impossibly high. The atmosphere was thick with expectation, a palpable energy that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the courthouse. As Judge Malone prepared to speak, the audience leaned forward, straining to catch every nuance of her words. Matthew's mind raced through the implications of the verdict, the potential consequences swirling in a storm of anxiety and hope. The sun continued its ascent, casting rays of light that filtered through the courthouse windows, illuminating the faces of those present. The moment of truth was at hand, and as the echoes of the trial reverberated within those walls, the future of Mark Cobb hung delicately in the balance. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation as Judge Anna Malone prepared to deliver the verdict. Each breath seemed to echo in the stillness, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone present. Matthew Sterling stood at the defense table, his composure a meticulously maintained facade, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and contingencies. Judge Malone's voice broke the silence, authoritative and clear.
In the case of the People versus Mark Cobb, the jury has found the defendant guilty on all counts.
Her words resonated through the courtroom, a definitive conclusion that sent ripples of shock and realization through those assembled. Mark Cobb's face blanched, the reality of his convictions settling over him like an inexorable tide. The murmurs of the crowd swelled, a mixture of surprise and inevitability. For Matthew Sterling, the verdict was a devastating blow, the culmination of a trial where his every strategy had been meticulously countered and his every maneuver deftly unraveled. Yet, Judge Malone was not finished. Her gaze shifted from the jury to Matthew Sterling, her eyes holding a steely resolve.
Before we adjourn, I must address matters of grave concern that have come to light during this trial.
Matthew's heart skipped a beat, a cold dread creeping into his veins. He watched as Judge Malone produced a small device, a microtransistor that glinted under the courtroom lights.
This device, placed discreetly for investigative purposes, has revealed a series of actions that cannot go unaddressed.
The courtroom held its collective breath as Judge Malone continued.
The recordings captured by this device provide irrefutable evidence of attempts to manipulate evidence, bribe witnesses, and undermine the integrity of this court. Furthermore, the recordings have captured deplorable comments made by Mr. Sterling, including racial slurs directed at this court.
The revelation struck like a thunderclap, each word a hammer blow to Matthew's carefully constructed facade. The room erupted into a cacophony of whispers and gasps, the shock of the revelation sending waves through the assembled crowd. Matthew's mind spun, his thoughts racing in a futile attempt to find a way out of the web that had ensnared him. The microtransistor, placed during his arrogant encounter with Judge Malone at the courthouse entrance, had been his undoing. The FBI, working in tandem with the court, had monitored his every move, capturing the very essence of his hubris and duplicity. Judge Malot's voice cut through the chaos, restoring order with her commanding presence.
Mr. Sterling, you will be held accountable for your actions. Charges will be filed and you will face trial for your conduct.
The courtroom was a swirl of emotions: anger, disbelief, vindication. For those who had watched Matthew Sterling's meteoric rise, the fall was both shocking and inevitable, a testament to the dangers of ambition unchecked by conscience. As the proceedings concluded, Matthew was led away, the reality of his situation pressing down on him with crushing force. The journey he had undertaken, driven by the pursuit of power and prestige, had reached a bitter and ignominious end. For Mary Brown, the verdict was a vindication of her unwavering commitment to justice. Her principles had prevailed, and the victory was not just for her, but for the ideals she had championed throughout her career. And for Judge Anna Malone, the trial had been a demonstration of the power of integrity and the rule of law. Her actions had ensured that justice was served, and her legacy was one of fairness and strength. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Franklin City, the courthouse doors closed on a chapter filled with ambition, deception, and ultimately, justice. For Matthew Sterling, a new chapter awaited. A trial of his own, where he would be forced to confront the consequences of his choices and the reality of his actions. The courthouse, with its towering columns and austere facade, stood as a silent witness to the unfolding drama within its walls. Inside, the halls echoed with the familiar cadence of footsteps and hushed conversations that accompanied the beginning of another trial. This time, however, the focus was on a man who had once commanded the courtroom with unwavering confidence: Matthew Sterling. As fate would have it, the irony of life had woven an unexpected narrative. The legal community buzzed with disbelief and curiosity as news spread that Mary Brown, the very lawyer who had dismantled Sterling's defense in the trial of Mark Cobb, would now stand as his defense attorney. It was a twist that few could have anticipated. Demanded to be dropped from the court, she filed immediately after her sermon. Mary Brown, known for her unwavering principles and commitment to ethical practice, had been approached to take Sterling's case. The request had come from Sterling himself, a decision born out of necessity rather than choice. His reputation in tatters and allies scarce, Matthew needed someone with the skill and integrity to navigate the treacherous legal waters ahead. Mary's decision to accept the case was not made lightly. She understood the gravity of the situation and the complexities involved in defending a man whose actions had undermined the very fabric of justice. Yet, she was driven by a belief in the right to a fair trial, a principle that transcended personal feelings and past rivalries. As she prepared for the trial, Mary approached her task with the same meticulous preparation and dedication that had marked her career. Her role was clear: to ensure that Matthew Sterling received the defense he was entitled to, despite the irony and challenges that accompanied it. The courtroom was filled with a sense of anticipation as the trial of Matthew Sterling commenced. Journalists, legal observers, and the public gathered to witness the proceedings, the air thick with expectation. The case promised to be a spectacle, a clash of ideals and a test of the very principles that defined the legal system. Mary stood at the defense table, her presence calm and composed. She had faced formidable opponents before, but this case was unlike any other. The man she was defending had been both a rival and an adversary, and the weight of that history hung heavy in the air. As the trial unfolded, Mary presented her defense with clarity and precision. Her arguments were grounded in fact and law, seeking to provide context and explanation for Sterling's actions. She challenged the prosecution's narrative, highlighting procedural errors and questioning the motivations behind the evidence presented. For Matthew Sterling, the experience was both humbling and enlightening. Seated at the defense table, he was forced to confront the reality of his situation and the consequences of his choices. The irony of being defended by the very lawyer who had defeated him was not lost on him, a poignant reminder of the unpredictability of life and justice. As the trial progressed, the dynamic between Mary and Matthew evolved. What began as a reluctant alliance grew into a mutual respect born of necessity and shared purpose. Mary, though unwavering in her principles, recognized the humanity in Sterling's plight, while Matthew gained a newfound appreciation for the ethics and integrity he had once dismissed. The trial was a crucible, a test of character that forced both lawyer and client to confront their beliefs and assumptions. It was a journey that challenged Matthew to reflect on his past actions and to consider the path he would choose moving forward. As the trial drew to a close, the courtroom braced for the verdict. The jury, having deliberated over the evidence and arguments presented, returned with a decision that would determine the course of Matthew Sterling's future. In the quiet that followed, Mary stood beside Sterling, her resolve unwavering. The irony of their positions was undeniable, yet it was a testament to the complexities of justice and the enduring belief in the right to a fair trial. For Matthew Sterling, the outcome was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to learn, and to seek redemption. And for Mary Brown, the trial was a reaffirmation of her commitment to justice, a reminder of the power of integrity and the importance of standing by one's principles even in the face of daunting challenges. As the sun set over Franklin City, the courthouse stood as a symbol of justice and redemption, a place where the past and present converged to shape the future. As the trial of Matthew Sterling reached its conclusion, the courtroom was poised for the pronouncement of a sentence that would define the course of his future. The anticipation was palpable, the air thick with the weight of expectation and consequence. Mary Brown, having navigated the complexities of the case with unwavering dedication, stood by Sterling's side, ready to hear the outcome of her efforts. The judge, a figure of solemn authority, addressed the court with a measured tone.
In light of the defense's compelling arguments and the evidence presented, the court acknowledges the mitigating circumstances surrounding Mr. Sterling's actions. While he will face repercussions for his conduct, the sentence will reflect the potential for rehabilitation and redemption.
The verdict, a blend of accountability and leniency, was a testament to Mary's skillful advocacy. Her ability to highlight Sterling's remorse and willingness to change had played a crucial role in tempering the penalties he faced. As the words echoed through the courtroom, a collective sigh of relief swept through those assembled, the tension giving way to a sense of resolution. For Matthew Sterling, the moment was transformative. As he stood beside Mary, the realization of how far he had strayed from his original path washed over him like a tide. Her integrity and dedication had rekindled a spark within him, a reminder of the ideals he had once held dear. He saw in her the embodiment of what he had aspired to be, a protector of the weak, a champion of justice. Reflecting on the choices that had led him to this juncture, Matthew felt a profound sense of sorrow for the mistakes he had made. The pursuit of power and prestige had clouded his judgment, leading him down a path of moral compromise and ethical erosion. Yet, in this moment of reckoning, he found a glimmer of hope, a chance to reclaim the principles he had once cherished. In the days that followed, Matthew embarked on a journey of introspection and change. Inspired by Mary's example, he resolved to use his skills and knowledge for a greater good, to advocate for those who lacked a voice in the justice system. His time in the courtroom had taught him the power of redemption, and he was determined to make amends for his past transgressions. Working alongside Mary, Matthew began to take on pro bono cases, representing clients who could not afford legal representation. Each case was an opportunity to make a difference, to uphold the very ideals that had drawn him to the legal profession in the first place. The work was challenging, but it was also deeply fulfilling, a reminder of the impact one could have when guided by integrity and compassion. As the city of Franklin continued its bustling existence, Matthew Sterling found himself on a path of renewal and purpose. The journey was not without its challenges, but it was one he embraced with a newfound sense of determination and humility. For Mary Brown, the transformation she witnessed in Matthew was a testament to the potential for change and the enduring power of justice. Together, they forged a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared ideals, a testament to the belief that even in the face of adversity, the pursuit of justice could lead to redemption and hope. The courthouse, a symbol of justice and possibility, stood as a beacon of hope, its doors open to all who sought to make a difference. And for Matthew Sterling, the journey had just begun, a journey toward redemption, guided by the light of integrity and the promise of a better tomorrow. As Matthew Sterling continued his journey of redemption, he couldn't shake the memory of his encounter with Judge Anna Malone on the courthouse steps. Her calm dignity and quiet strength had left a profound impression on him, one that lingered long after the trial had concluded. It was a moment that forced him to confront not only his ethical failings, but also the prejudices that had colored his view of the world. The realization of his past arrogance and the racial insensitivity of his behavior weighed heavily on his conscience. He had dismissed Judge Malone with a condescending quip, failing to recognize her as an equal, let alone the figure of authority she was. It was a stark reminder of the biases that had seeped into his actions, often without his awareness. Determined to atone for these transgressions, Matthew resolved to channel his legal acumen toward advocating for minorities and marginalized communities. He understood that systemic inequalities often left these groups vulnerable and voiceless in the justice system, a system he had once manipulated for personal gain. With renewed purpose, Matthew sought out cases that involved racial discrimination, police misconduct, and other injustices faced by minorities. Each case was an opportunity to learn, to listen, and to amplify the voices of those who had long been silenced. He partnered with organizations dedicated to civil rights and equality, offering his skills and resources to support their missions. Matthew's transformation was not instantaneous. It was a gradual process of unlearning and relearning, of confronting uncomfortable truths about himself and the world around him. He attended workshops and seminars on cultural competency and bias, seeking to understand the lived experiences of those he aimed to help. Through these efforts, he built alliances with community leaders and activists, forging relationships based on trust and mutual respect. His work in this new chapter of his life was driven by a profound sense of justice and empathy. He found fulfillment in helping to dismantle the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable to those without privilege or power. Each victory, no matter how small, reinforced his commitment to this cause and deepened his understanding of the impact he could have. Judge Anna Malone, observing his efforts from afar, saw in Matthew a genuine desire for change and redemption. Their initial encounter had been a catalyst for his transformation, and she admired his willingness to confront his past and forge a new path. In time, their professional relationship evolved into a partnership built on shared goals and a commitment to justice for all. The city of Franklin, with its diverse tapestry of cultures and communities, became a backdrop for Matthew's journey of growth and redemption. His work was not just about winning cases, it was about making a tangible difference in the lives of those he represented. It was about ensuring that every person, regardless of race or background, had access to the justice they deserved. As he stood on the steps of the courthouse, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, Matthew Sterling felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He understood that while he could not change the past, he had the power to shape the future, one where justice was truly blind and where the scales were balanced for all. With each passing day, he continued to strive for a world where equality and fairness were not just ideals but realities, and in doing so, he found not only redemption but a newfound sense of purpose and belonging, a testament to the enduring power of change and the promise of a better tomorrow.